Hello, everyone. Welcome to another round of the VS Code live stream. I'm Olivia, if you haven't seen me on these before, part of the VS Code team. And today, very excited, and I think a lot of you are too, judging by the amount of chat we've already had when this just started 30 seconds ago, because today is our live stream release party for the new release of VS Code for the month of May. So we have a lot of great team members who will be presenting some of the highlights from today's release. And this is a really great opportunity for you all to actually get a chance to interact with those team members. So definitely get active in that chat. I'm already loving the energy. We have so many Olas. Hello, what up? So happy to see you all here. I think today's going to be a really great day. So before we kick things off, I just wanted to take a chance to really say thank you to everyone. So in our release notes, we always have a section that lists all of our contributors. And starting in this past release party, we started to actually go ahead and call them out at the start of our release parties. So if we take a look at these release notes, we can see there's so many contributors. We really couldn't do this without you all. I wish I could individually call out every single one of you, but as you can see as I scroll, there are so many of you all. I know some of you are probably on this live stream, so huge thank you if your name is up here. Again, this is at the end of our release notes, so definitely take a chance to go and recognize these people. So many people from web extensions, PRs, issue tracking, to different repos. I know that I speak on behalf of the entire VS Code team in saying thank you. VS Code would not be where we are today if it wasn't for you. So that's the end of my thank you. And now we can actually go ahead and dive into what we have planned for today. So our very first speaker is going to be Christof, who will tell us some of the cool updates from dev containers. Hey, Christof.
Hey, Olivia.
How's it going?
So yeah, great. Thanks. So what I'm gonna show you today is actually the dev container CLI, which we just recently released as open source under the MIT license. And now some of you might already know dev containers from the remote containers extension in VS Code, or also the GitHub code spaces. And so what the dev container essentially is it's like an isolated environment where you can have all your development tools installed without having to install them locally. We do that using Docker containers. And in order to kind of set that up, you need a dev container configuration. Let me just quickly show you an example here in my terminal. So that's a dev container JSON. We're going to use the Rust sample that we have for this. You can also see that there's like a tools specific section to that. The details of this are not that important. It's the essence really is that this tells the CLI how a dev container should be created and also operated. And I can now, based on that, I can spin that up. So I just do a dev container up with the workspace folder, which is my current folder. You see the CLI do its work. And now when we use Docker to look at what's going on, we see that the container has been started and is up and running. Now there's only a few things that you can do with the dev container now, and one thing is you can run arbitrary commands. For example, I'm just going to show you how I can run cargo, one of the Rust tools that's installed inside the dev container. I'll just execute that, and that's now run inside the dev container, so no need for me to install cargo locally. And see the hello world sample being run here. Now, using a CLI to start the dev container might not be like everyone's thing, but even if you're using remote containers or GitHub code spaces, this will still benefit you. So, for example, we've started building additional tools on top of the CLI. We've just released the GitHub action and the Azure DevOps task that you can use to run the dev container in your continuous integration builds. That means you can use the same setup that you're using locally for development. You can now easily reuse also as a dev container in your CI builds, for example, to run tests, or also to produce artifacts from your build. And yeah, I should also mention that the CLIs, by the way, is not something that we just wrote. It's code that we've refactored from our existing implementation and now published it as a CLI. So right after we did that, we already also started using it from remote containers and from GitHub code spaces. So you might already be using it without having noticed. Yeah, apart from that, I want to mention kind of the overarching effort that we're working on here is the open dev container specification, where we specify how all of this is supposed to work. And so kind of our goal with these efforts is that we can get more tools and editors to support dev containers. And yeah, if you want to learn more.
We have one person who said finally, and like I definitely agree with this, because dev containers, if y'all aren't using dev containers, it is a game changer to begin with. It makes setup so easy, whether you're a student, whether you're just joining a new dev team, whether you just want to be able to really quickly switch between a Python project versus something else, right? It's so easy. And so this is really like moving us in that direction to be even more accessible, right, Christof?
Absolutely, yeah. Also, if you want to learn more, we have a website at containers.dev, where we talk about the specification, but also the tools that are currently using the CLI that I just demoed. And yeah, that's all I have.
Awesome. And I think there's like a little bit of a misconception that when people were using dev containers before, that it was like only a VS Code thing. So is this kind of moving us in that direction to say, hey, it's not just VS Code, you can use dev containers wherever you are?
Absolutely, yes. So there have been a few properties in the dev container JSON configuration file that I just showed you that were VS Code specific, and we've moved all these properties. We've moved under a new customization property where other tools can, just like VS Code, have their own customizations in there, and so that's really opening up also the configuration file to others to participate.
Awesome. And this is a new, right? The open specification CLI are new for this release. So as people are starting to try this out, what's the best way to provide feedback back to the team?
So we have there's a repository. It's under GitHub dev containers/CLI, and there we're really eager to collect feedback. We've also set up an issue there specifically for collecting feedback, but you can, of course, always also just create a new issue if you have like a specific ask or maybe a button to report. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so everyone watching who's super pumped about these dev containers, definitely try this out. Get back to us if there's new features you want to see, if you're having any issues trying things out, because this is how we're going to iterate over this and make it even better for y'all. So on that note, can you dive a little bit deeper into maybe what the next steps are from the VS Code team's perspective for dev containers? What's the future look like for that?
So we mainly at the moment we're mainly looking for feedback on the specification, but also, of course, on the CLI. Some of the things that we're working on is we're improving the existing container features that we already support. That's really essentially just something that makes it very easy for you to add on like individual tools to an existing dev container. And we're going to open that further up to the community, such that the community can also easily write these container features, as we call them, and add and really create an ecosystem around that.
Awesome. Sounds like there's some good things coming. And just one more final thing. Someone did ask, what are dev containers? So we have a ton of blog posts and docs on this, but Christof, if you could give just like a quick pitch of how you would summarize dev containers, I think that would really help a lot of people who haven't had the chance to yet use them.
Yeah, so essentially, really, it's an environment, right, where we install your development tools, and what we're using behind the scenes to do that is a Docker container. But unless you want to get really specific on what's installed there, you don't really need to know much about Docker. Yeah, and so a container is really just, at the moment, it's a Linux environment running inside the container, and that isolates your development tools from, like, your development tools installation from your local machine. So there's no more need to add to your local install just to get a new project up and running.
Yeah, they're definitely very powerful. Devamsh, sorry, I probably butchered that, said they're mini containers with your programming language and dependencies installed. So that's kind of also a great kind of way that you can use them. One way that I like to think about them is it's, think about when you first like onboard onto a project or you're doing a tutorial or something, and there's always like 10 or more steps of, oh, go and install this, and then go do that, and then do this, and make sure it's that. Dev containers can be really great for just, you install the dev container and you're up and running. It has everything already on that dev container. So it's super powerful. And this is showing, we're definitely kind of moving in that direction, putting a lot of investment in it. And there's a lot of exciting things in the future for it. Cool. All right, Christof, anything else you want to share?
I can just add to that the dev container JSON that we were just looking at, right, the configuration, you check that into your repository. So it's really then shared with the team and also the community. That makes it really easy then to reuse.
Great point. Yeah, it does make it so much easier to make sure that, one of the jokes we always have is it helps eliminate the, well, it worked on my machine thing, right? Where you're trying to figure out why you pulled someone else's code and it's not working, or everyone's all confused. You're like, no, it worked when I ran it. This helps eliminate that because everyone will have the same environment on their boxes.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Christof. Really excited to see where the future of this goes. And definitely everyone watching, please try out this new dev container CLI, check out the open specification, and let us know what you think.
Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you. All right. So up next, we have Sandeep, who's going to talk about some extension updates we have in this release. Hey, Sandeep.
Hey, Olivia. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hey, I'm Sandeep. I'm one of the developers on VS Code. Today, I would like to show a couple of very good features we have released in this milestone in the extensions area. So to start with, the first one is the deprecated extensions. Before going to the deprecated extensions, we have a very big and great marketplace. So where you have quite a number of extensions, like around 35K. So most of these extensions are very helpful, and sometimes some of the extensions being there for a while and not being updated, mainly because extension authors might not be having a time to update, or probably there is a better extension available in the marketplace, or sometimes VS Code thinks this is a cool feature, let's build it into VS Code, right? So one such extension is browser preview. It's a very useful extension, but somehow this was not being maintained for a year or so. So we would, and the extension author himself, would like to deprecate this extension, right? So I will be talking more about how we will be showing this feature in VS Code, right? When there are any deprecated extensions. So let's say I was having this extension installed already in VS Code, and there is a better extension in the marketplace. So which is called Live Preview. It's an alternate extension of this, and I have this extension already installed. So you already see that we show a migrate button when you have already this deprecated extension installed, and you can migrate by uninstalling this extension and installing the Live Preview extension. So we support this migrate for this specific scenario. And other scenario which I would like to mention, which is pretty cool, is that if you're a Rust developer and you would like to try look for a Rust extension that will help you, so you can already see that there is a very the top extension, which is called Rust. It is being downloaded by 1 million times, around more than 1 million times, but the rating is like around 3.5. But more importantly, this extension is kind of deprecated because it's not being maintained. But there is an alternate extension available, which is Rust Analyzer. So now VS Code will help you in determining the alternate better extension if there is a deprecated extension. So you can install the right extension to start with, when you are doing programming. Last but not least, there is another scenario which I would like to bring it up. So let's try this bracket paired colorizer. Yeah, this extension has been very popular in the marketplace. This extension is all about colorizing your brackets in your programming language. Since there are due to some performance impacts, a few milestones back, VS Code inbuilt this feature, and this is how we would like to deprecate this going forward. And mentioning that this extension is now part of VS Code, and you can configure the features of this extension by going to the settings of VS Code. You can configure these settings, and just configuring these settings, you will get this feature instead of installing the extension.
Yeah, this is awesome. It makes it so easy. It literally affects like millions of people who have these things downloaded, right? It's so intuitive. Just be like, oh, go here, right? I love it when it just kind of walks you to it, and I don't really have to think much about it. I'm just like, okay, install this instead. Check.
True. I think this will be very helpful for most of the users who are looking for right extensions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yep.
So what if I was using an extension and I knew it was deprecated, whether it's from like a new setting in VS Code, or I know that they came out with a different one that kind of replaces it? How would I mark that? Like, how would I let y'all know it's deprecated?
That's a good question. So currently it is being handwritten by us. So you have to reach out to us. We have already Isidore in the chat room. So he's our PM. So you can reach out to us, talking to him or creating an issue in VS Code, and we will see. We'll check that extension and mark it as deprecated in our internal, service or internal file or something.
Okay, that makes sense. And then Izzy, who is one of our PMs, he also added in the comments, like, to clarify, it's only going to if the extension author agrees to it. So you can't just like willy-nilly be like deprecate everything. So if you're an extension author, don't worry. You're not just going to all of a sudden see everything deprecated because someone just decided they want it to be deprecated. So
thank you, Izzy. That's a very good point, which I forgot.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Okay. If there are no questions, I think I will quickly jump to the next topic, which is pretty cool. I hope a lot of users will like it. Okay, so the next is, we have started allowing users to sponsor extensions from VS Code. So let's say you like one of the extensions, you have been using it a lot. In my case, I use this material icon theme extension, the themes coming from this, the icon themes coming from it. Let me quickly show that, right? So these icons, which comes from the extension, are pretty cool. And I've been using it for a long time, and I like this extension. This is one of my favorites. And the extension author can enable this extension to sponsor. So now I would like to go and sponsor the work which this section of this being doing. It's pretty cool. So we show the sponsoring information in the extension, and you can just click on it, and it will take you to the sponsoring site of the extension author, and you can sponsor from there. Yeah,
that's awesome. So if you're already in kind of the extension authoring community, you know how much work and love goes into all of these extensions. If you're not, just to like give y'all a quick like preview into it, a lot of these extensions are just made in people's free time, right? It's just things that they thought would be useful. So they're taking their time out of their day to really get it set up and to do different feature requests that y'all were asked for and all things like that. So sponsoring it really goes a long way. If you have a favorite extension, go ahead and take the chance to sponsor that, just to show, hey, I really like this. I want you to keep working on it. And that's how you can really start giving back to that community, because there's a lot of hours that go into these extension devs that sometimes they don't feel that support back. So this is a great way to kind of bring that closer. The sponsorship was already kind of on that GitHub, but now you can do it straight from VS Code. So you don't even have to do that. And it'll take you straight to that link.
Exactly.
Cool. I love that. And I love that we got a chance to kind of spotlight an extension as well.
Yep.
Awesome. Anything else in kind of the extension world, either from this release or in the future, that you want to highlight?
So in future, I think we are working on a couple of features, like mostly trying to make the extensions feature closer to the users. One of the big feature what we are working is improving search in extensions. I think we will we'll have this listed in our plans. But that's what come in my mind.
Awesome. Love to hear. I think it's really helpful for viewers to actually like hear straight from the team. Okay, what's top of mind for y'all? Because people really like to kind of see that. One like kind of related question, if you have an answer to this. Someone said, I'm new to programming, so welcome. There's a lot of people who are new to programming on this stream. They want to know what extension would be useful for web development if they're kind of just getting started out.
Oh yeah, so I can recommend, I don't know, I mean, in web development, I think you might be using Python or JavaScript or TypeScript. I think it depends on the tech stack you are using. So we have a good Python extension, which you can start with. Or, if you are mainly into HTML or CSS, we have inbuilt HTML features, but there are some nice HTML extensions which you can look at. But I think you can also go and look at, what by programming languages, and you can see all the list of extensions that can help you depending upon what programming language you're working on. For JavaScript, for Angular, you can always find good number of extensions here.
Absolutely, yeah, and definitely. If you're like completely new to the whole extension world, a lot of times if you're cloning a repo to do a tutorial or something, VS Code will be like, hey, this uses Python. Do you want to install Python? So you'll also kind of get some of those nudges to say, hey, we've noticed that this is in your repo. Do you want to install this? So there are kind of some prompts to help you out there. Tons of tutorials out there. Denzer says live server is good if you're really new. So just kind of, if anyone else has any sort of tips or extensions that they loved when they first started out, definitely drop them out so we can help Joel out there. Cool. All right, Sandeep, well, we really appreciate having you on. Definitely excited to see that. Again, go sponsor your favorite extension because it goes a long way. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, so then last but not least, we're going to have Andrew up to talk about some TypeScript changes. Hey, Andrew.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Olivia, thanks.
How's it going?
Yes, good. Thanks for having me here. So TypeScript 4.7 just came out, which is shipping with the new version of VS Code. So I wanted to share a couple of improvements that we've made to JavaScript and TypeScript experience in the editor. So I've got VS Code loaded up here, and I've actually selected the old version of TypeScript first, 4.6 here, so that we can take a look at how things were before this latest update. So the first thing I want to talk about is organized imports. It's a command that a lot of people like to use to keep their imports nice and tidy, sorted, organized. But it does have some shortcomings that we noticed and we've addressed here in this latest changes. So here I have this first import that actually runs some side effects. Maybe I'm setting up some analytics tools, just tacking it on a window. So it might be important that this runs first before some of these other things. And unfortunately, organized imports doesn't really know that. So if I run it here, organized imports, we're getting a kind of alphabetical style organizing here. And unfortunately, my side effects ones came all the way to the bottom. So that could really break things if I was in one of these other files trying to rely on that already being set up. So I'm going to undo that really quick and go ahead and update to, actually, this is the nightly version of TypeScript, which I encourage everyone to use if you enjoy trying out the latest things. But these changes are in 4.7 as well, which you should be getting by default in the new VS Code. So this time, what we can do is maybe add some groups with new lines here so that I've got this important one up top, and then I've got this group of my third-party imports here, and then my local imports. And actually, let me just make these kind of messy really quick so we can see some other stuff going on. Maybe put some unused ones in here. So now in TypeScript 4.7, if I organize imports, it keeps the groups sorted, or it keeps the groups themselves in the right order. It doesn't change those around, and it just cleans up within those groups. So this can just be a real easy way to just kind of indicate like, hey, no, these are supposed to come after this one, and I want these by myself too. So no configuration changes needed. Just add some new lines, and we'll keep them there.
Nice. I like that when I don't have to go like track down a setting or anything. I just, okay, this is a group, that's a group, and that's it.
Yeah, we like to do that. There's quite a lot of settings to control your JavaScript and TypeScript experience, and they're worth looking at. But whenever we can make one that kind of just works, we like to do that.
Absolutely. All for that.
So the second thing I want to show, speaking of imports, if you've ever been in this situation where maybe you're using a function that you've imported from a third-party dependency, let's say I'm using sum from Lodash, and it's not working the way I expect it to for some reason, and it's always it's never the best when you have to do this. But if you want to go track down like what this is actually doing in node modules, sometimes you got to do that. But if you've ever tried to do this and you go to definition on this, a lot of times you might end up on this type declaration file, which, especially if you're a JavaScript user, is probably not what you're looking for. This declaration file is what powers all of the IntelliSense when you're writing JavaScript or TypeScript. So it's great that we have these, but it's not really going to help you understand what is going on at runtime. It's not going to take you to that file and let you set a breakpoint or something like that. So to address this, we've added a new experimental command called go to source definition. So if I click that, we track down the JavaScript files and try to find a definition that looks like it's the one that is actually going to happen at runtime. And so it successfully found this one in lodash.js. And from here, I can just use regular go to definition to finally go to this last one here. So I could set a breakpoint here or just inspect the code if it's not working the way I expect it to.
Nice.
So I should point out that this is an experimental feature because, as it turns out, it can be a little bit difficult for us to do this with 100% confidence. One thing that you might have noticed in this declaration file is this is installed to a completely different place. It's in this these caches under TypeScript and under this @types folder. So this declaration file was actually written by hand by TypeScript community members in the definitely typed repository. Anytime you see that @types, that's what's going on here. And so we actually have to do quite a number of tricks and heuristics to try to create this mapping. Since both were written by hand by different people, they don't always match up perfectly one-to-one. So we are definitely looking for feedback on how is this working. You may find a couple things that don't turn up source definitions. So when that happens, we definitely want to hear about it.
Awesome. Yeah, we're already getting a lot of good feedback in the chat. Someone said, I've been wanting this for a long time. Not just you. I know this is one of the heaviest upvoted features we've had in the JavaScript community. So Andrew, you mentioned this is experimental. We want to know if it's not working. How do people let y'all know that they've ran into this issue?
Yeah, great question. So this is actually mentioned in the release notes. So if you open the command palette, this is one of my favorite VS Code features, actually, the ability to just find these release notes really quick and go back and see what I missed. So it's mentioned right here in TypeScript go to source definition. So if you take a look at that, there is a link to a specific GitHub issue where I'm looking for specific feedback on this. So if you go to that issue, tell me exactly what library you were using, what import you were trying it out on, and I will very likely personally take a look at that and see what's going on there and see if we can't improve it more.
Awesome. You heard it here, guys. Andrew will reach out personally if you have any issues. Awesome. And so we kind of have these two different commands now, right? Go to definition, go to source definition. Is the plan to like eventually merge those, or just see how the go to source definition works out?
We've been getting this question a lot. I think for TypeScript users, so this experience is like exactly the same between JavaScript and TypeScript. For TypeScript users, a lot of users are actually pretty used to these declaration files. They really do give you a great idea of the contract of a certain function that you're importing. And so I think, at least for TypeScript users, we really think that this is the 100% confidence canonical definition. And it's actually probably more rare that you need to go to the underlying JavaScript implementation. So we kind of like that, at least for TypeScript users, and are pretty happy to put this in a new command. For JavaScript users, I'm definitely more sympathetic to the idea that like, hey, like I don't know what this DTS stuff means. I just want to see the JavaScript. Can you take me there by default? And right now, like a big part of the reason why we're not making it the default is the fact that it's not always 100% confidence. We're working around some improvements around that, being able to tell you with a little notification or an icon or something when the result that we give you was a guess, and improving that intelligence. So I think the answer is long-term, like maybe we'll see. This is why we want to get feedback on it. But in the meantime, something that has made this a lot easier for me to use is you can put a keyboard shortcut on this. So if you open your key bindings in the JSON, I have mine set to Command-Shift F12. And this has worked out really nicely for me. So you can set up that key binding. It's TypeScript.goToSourceDefinition. Don't be confused by the name. It works in JavaScript too.
Okay.
So that makes it pretty easy, actually, because usually I either command click or F12 to use go to definition. So it's just one or two more keys to get that go to source definition. So I kind of have whichever one I'm looking for right at my fingertips there.
Cool. That's such a good tip. I'm going to have to use that. Awesome. All right, Andrew, well, is there anything else you want to talk to us about in the TypeScript world?
These were the things I wanted to demo, but especially if you're a TypeScript user, make sure you check out our release notes. This really only scratches the surface of what's new in TypeScript, and our release schedule is synced up with VS Code's release schedule pretty tightly. So pretty much anytime there's a new VS Code release, there's new JavaScript and TypeScript features too. So make sure you keep up with those and check them all out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. I think people are really pumped about this feature. I know that it's something that people have been wanting to get their hands on. So definitely try it out. Leave some feedback on that issue that's linked in the release notes, and then we'll iterate over that. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Well, Andrew was our last presenter. So that wraps up our release party for the May VS Code release. Next week, we will not be having a live stream because the team that runs the live streams, my team, is going to be on a team offsite. So we will not be available to do a live stream, but we'll be back the following week and then next month again for another release party. So we saw some really great things today with the dev container CLI and open specification, some of the extension support and deprecation features, and then finally Andrew with those TypeScript updates. So a lot of those were things that we want feedback on. So definitely want you all to try everything out that you saw today. Look at our full release notes to get more of what's going on. And also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube and TikTok channels because we will be dropping a release highlight short in the next day or two. That's going to show the release highlights in 60 seconds or less. So that's a great way to see even more of what's cool. So big thanks to all of our presenters today. Love having the VS Code team on this. And thank you all for joining. Really couldn't have this community without you. And we'll see you next time.